The wind howled through the broken windows of the small radio tower, a once bustling communication hub now reduced to a rusting relic standing alone in the outskirts of the city. Among the ruins, Caleb Miller hunched over a makeshift workstation, twisting knobs and fine-tuning dials on an ancient ham radio. The static was familiar. It was always there. But tonight, something was different. It had been 462 days since the first wave hit. Caleb had marked each one in chalk across the concrete wall of his bunker. The world had fallen into silence, the kind that seeps into your bones and reminds you how alone you really are. Cities had collapsed under the weight of the infection, and those who didn't die in the first few weeks had become shadows, hiding, scavenging, surviving. Caleb had been one of them. A former electrical engineer with an obsession for old radio tech, he had retreated into isolation with his equipment, convinced that if he just listened long enough, he'd hear something, anything, that would point to hope. Every night, without fail, he would climb the narrow stairwell of the tower, settle into the creaking metal chair, and turn the radio on. Frequencies rolled past like waves, carrying nothing but hisses and crackles, until tonight. It started with a pop. Then silence. Then a voice, barely audible over the static. Caleb froze. His hand hovered above the tuning dial as he leaned closer, straining to pick up the garbled message. Then alive, coordinates, not safe. His heart slammed against his ribs. He quickly scribbled what he could decipher onto a notepad, his fingers trembling. Most of the message was unintelligible, a mess of broken words and static interference. But there was a phrase that kept looping every few minutes, clearer each time it returned. They're not just dead. They're listening. A chill crept down Caleb's spine. He pulled back from the receiver, staring at it like it had just grown fangs. For the past year and a half, he had begged for a sign, and now that he had one, it came wrapped in fear and mystery. "Who's listening?" he whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. The message repeated again. The same cryptic warning. A fragment of coordinates flashed through his mind. He had caught part of a location, something near Ridgeway Creek, a place nearly 30 miles west of his current hideout. A no-man's land surrounded by abandoned homes and thick woods. No one had dared venture there since the early days of the outbreak. He glanced at the map pinned to the wall. Ridgeway had once been a rural suburb, now redlined as a dead zone. He had heard stories from passing survivors, rumors of strange noises in the woods and people who vanished without a trace. Some said the infected were evolving. Others believed there was something worse than zombies lurking in the forest. But if there were survivors there, if the message was real, Caleb's instincts battled with logic. It could be a trap. A faulty transmission. Maybe even a hallucination born from too many nights of solitude and fear. But the voice had sounded real. Desperate. He sat back in his chair, letting the hum of the radio fill the silence as he weighed his options. His supplies would last another week at most. The food was low, the water nearly gone. If he stayed here, he'd starve. But if he left, if he followed the signal, he might walk into something far worse. Suddenly, a different noise broke the static. A tone. Low, rhythmic, almost like Morse code. He snapped to attention and began translating. DANGR. SHELTR. DONTTRUST. The last word cut off in a buzz of static. Caleb's blood ran cold. The message was coming from the same frequency. Two different sources. Two very different warnings. Now he was more than intrigued, he was caught in a web of contradictions. Who was telling the truth? Were there survivors at Ridgeway Creek, or was someone luring people in? He stared at the coordinates again. It wasn't much, but it was the only lead he'd had in months. Caleb grabbed his pack, filled it with essentials, flashlight, canned food, water bottle, extra batteries, and the revolver he hadn't fired in over 6 months. He tucked the notepad with the coordinates into his jacket pocket, and before stepping out, he glanced back at the radio one last time. The message had changed again. This time, it whispered a single word, run. He didn't wait to hear more. As the sun set behind the shattered skyline, Caleb descended the tower and stepped into the twilight of a dying world, toward a signal from the unknown that would change everything. The air thickened as Caleb pushed through the overgrown trail leading into Ridgeway Creek. The trees stood like ancient sentinels, twisted and silent, their leaves whispering secrets to the wind. He had left the crumbling city behind just after dusk, walking through the night, drawn forward by the coordinates scribbled on his notepad. 30 miles had never felt so far. By sunrise, Caleb stood at the edge of the Ridgeway woods. And almost instantly, he knew something was wrong. No birds. No insects. Not even the groan of a distant infected. Just silence. Deep. Oppressive. The kind that made you feel like you were being watched. He adjusted his pack, gripping his revolver tighter as he stepped into the trees. The canopy swallowed the light, turning the morning into a shadowy twilight. Caleb kept close to the path, though it was barely visible through years of decay and neglect. Half-collapsed fences and rusted signs lay scattered, remnants of a neighborhood that no longer existed. The further he walked, the louder the quiet became. Crunch. He froze. That wasn't his step. He turned quickly, eyes scanning the woods. The trees stood still. But someone, had moved. "Hello," he called out, instantly regretting it. Nothing. He took a breath, pushing forward. After an hour of navigating thick brush and eerie quiet, he found it. A shack. Half buried in the undergrowth and covered in moss, it sat slanted and forgotten. But Caleb noticed something strange. The door was reinforced. Metal welded over wood. Someone had tried to fortify it. He approached slowly. No sounds inside. Just a soft mechanical hum. He stepped closer and found a generator behind the shack, dead, rusted, useless. But inside, something else was on. He knocked once. No answer. Then again. Still nothing. Taking a risk, he pushed the door open. It groaned loudly, and the musty air hit him like a punch. Inside was a single table, a chair, and a radio, nearly identical to the one he'd used back in the tower. Still running. Still crackling. Caleb stepped in and closed the door behind him, listening carefully. The radio emitted faint static, but the same voice from before repeated. Coordinates, survivors. Ridgeway. He sat down and leaned in. Then another voice cut through, this one distorted, mechanical, almost artificial. You were warned. Do not trust the message. They are listening. Caleb's breath hitched. 2 signals. 2 sides. But who was lying? Suddenly, the static changed pitch. He heard a scream. Not through the radio. Outside. It was a woman's voice, raw and terrified. Caleb jumped to his feet, rushing to the door, but hesitated. What if it was bait? A recording to draw him out? But what if it wasn't? Another scream echoed through the forest. Closer. Caleb bolted out, adrenaline overriding logic. The trees blurred as he ran toward the sound. It came from deeper in the woods, near a collapsed playground swallowed by vines and weeds. He skidded to a halt and saw her, a young woman, maybe early 20s, running frantically toward him. Blood on her shirt. Her eyes wild. Help, she shouted. They're coming. Who's coming? Caleb asked, raising his revolver. They look human, but they're not, she gasped, grabbing his arm. Please, we have to go. Before he could ask more, a shrill sound pierced the air. A high-pitched screech, unnatural and electronic. Then figures emerged from the woods. 4 of them. Dressed in ragged clothes. Moving with jerky precision. Their skin was pale, their eyes wide and glassy. They didn't moan like zombies. They didn't shamble. They marched. Caleb didn't wait. He grabbed the woman's hand and ran. They weaved through the trees, jumping over roots and ducking under branches as those things pursued them, fast, relentless, silent. What are they? Caleb shouted. I don't know, she cried. They're like zombies, but controlled. Programmed. Caleb's mind raced. The warnings. The messages. They're listening. They reached an old drainage tunnel and ducked inside. The things didn't follow. They stopped at the edge, watching with twitching heads. Caleb and the woman collapsed inside, gasping for breath. After a long silence, he finally turned to her. I'm Caleb. What's your name? She looked at him, eyes wide with fear. Marissa. I've been out here for days. I heard the same signal you did. She reached into her coat and pulled out a crumpled note. The voice told me to come to Ridgeway. But it's a trap. The signal, it's not human. Caleb's skin crawled. What do you mean? Marissa stared into the dark tunnel. Whatever's sending that message, it's not trying to help us. It's studying us. Caleb sat back, heart pounding. He had followed the signal looking for hope. But now, it seemed the real horror was just beginning. The darkness inside the drainage tunnel pressed in on Caleb and Marissa, the stale air thick with the scent of mold and rusted metal. Outside, the figures still stood at the entrance, silent, unmoving, watching. It had been over an hour since they'd fled into the tunnel, but the inhuman things hadn't left. They were waiting. I don't get it, Caleb muttered, glancing back toward the faint light from the opening. If they were infected, they'd be clawing to get in. Those things, they're waiting like they know we have to come out eventually. Marissa nodded, her knees pulled to her chest. That's what I've been trying to tell you. They're not like the others. They don't rot. They don't eat. They just observe. Caleb studied her face. Dirt-streaked. Tired. But not broken. So what are they? I think they're receivers, she whispered. Something's controlling them. Directing them remotely. Caleb blinked. Like drones? She nodded slowly. But that would mean, he stopped. The thought chilled him. The signal. Marissa finished for him. It's not a distress call. It's a lure. Designed to pull in survivors. They're not helping people. They're hunting them. A heavy silence followed. Caleb pulled out the notepad from his jacket. The scribbled coordinates. The repeated phrases. The static. All of it. He had been so sure that signal was a lifeline. Now it felt like a noose. Back at the shack, he said. The voice changed. Said not to trust the message. Said they're listening. I've heard that too, Marissa replied. But only when the static shifts. I think there's someone out there trying to break through the main broadcast. A second signal. A warning. Caleb leaned back against the cold tunnel wall. So we've got two voices. One telling us to come. One telling us to run. But we still don't know who's behind either. Marissa pulled something from her pocket, an old digital recorder. I've been recording the signal for days. Every time it loops, there's a faint sound layered under it. Not a voice. A tone. She played it. A low-frequency pulse echoed through the tunnel, rhythmic and almost musical. I slowed it down, ran it through an old signal scrambler I found in a comms bunker. It's not random. What is it then? Caleb asked. Marissa met his gaze. Morse code. Caleb sat up straight. You're serious? She nodded and handed him a small, folded paper. I translated the section I could. It says, do not answer. The signal is bait. They are learning from you. Caleb felt the world tilt slightly beneath him. All this time, he thought he was searching for others. For a safe zone. For hope. But what if he'd been part of a test? He looked at Marissa. Why you? Why are you still alive out here? She hesitated. I was part of a scavenging group. 10 of us. We got the same signal, thought it was a safe zone. We followed it to Ridgeway. But when we got here, we found nothing but those things. One by one, we were picked off. But they didn't just kill us. They waited. Watched. Like they were gathering information. Her voice cracked. I think they're learning how we survive. How we respond. And I think the signal is adapting. Caleb felt his gut twist. Adapting? The messages have been changing. At first it was just static. Then short words. Then coordinates. Now they're using voices. Our own voices. I heard my friend's voice on the radio 2 days after he was killed. Suddenly, Caleb's breath caught. The voice on the signal he'd heard, the one that repeated they're not just dead. They're listening. That voice had sounded like his brother. But his brother had died a year ago. Outside the tunnel, the light shifted. The figures were gone. Caleb slowly stood, peering toward the entrance. They left. No, Marissa said, rising beside him. They're repositioning. We have to move. Now. They emerged from the tunnel into the shadowed forest, the air colder than before. Caleb scanned the tree line, his instincts screaming. Something had changed. The signal in his pocket flared to life, his hand radio, long silent, buzzed with sudden static. And then, his brother's voice. Caleb. Don't run. You're close now. Come to me. He froze. Marissa's eyes widened in horror. Do not listen to it. How does it know my name? Marissa grabbed his arm. Because it's been listening since the day you turned that radio on. Caleb looked into the woods. And somewhere, not far off, a distant light blinked through the trees. The source of the signal. The heart of it all. And it was calling him by name. The blinking light in the distance pulsed steadily, like a heartbeat buried in the woods. Caleb couldn't look away. His brother's voice still echoed from the radio in his hand, distorted but familiar. Too familiar. Come to me, Caleb. You're so close now. Marissa slapped the radio from his grip. It skidded across the dirt and fell silent. Don't listen to it, she said sharply. It's not him. It's never been him. Caleb turned to her, his jaw tight. I heard his voice. He said my name. They always do, Marissa replied, her voice low. That's how they pull you in. They use your memories. Your grief. He took a step back, breath uneven. Why me? Why my brother? She hesitated. I think it's more than just survival. These signals, they're studying people. Scanning our responses. If they know who matters to us, they know how to manipulate us. Caleb stared at the blinking light beyond the trees. And then he made a decision. I have to see what's out there. Marissa grabbed his shoulder. No. That's exactly what they want. I need to know the truth, he said. If we're going to survive this, we have to understand it. All of it. Marissa's jaw clenched. She didn't argue, just nodded once, then bent down and picked up the radio. She turned the dial until the static came through again, faint and cold. Then we go together. But the second you hear something that doesn't feel right, we cut the signal. They moved toward the light. The forest seemed to bend around them, the trees darker, denser. Every step forward felt like walking into a trap, but the blinking light remained steady. It drew them like moths to a flame. After nearly an hour, they reached a clearing. And there it was. A radio tower. Smaller than Caleb expected, maybe 20 feet high, but completely intact, no rust, no overgrowth. It looked new. Beneath it stood a small prefab station, metal walls polished, doors slightly ajar. Wires ran from the tower into the building, glowing faint blue where they connected to a humming generator. Marissa pulled Caleb behind a tree. This place wasn't here 2 days ago. How do you know? I passed through this area. It was just trees. Nothing else. Caleb's skin went cold. then, someone built this. Recently. Marissa handed him a compact pair of binoculars. Check the windows. He scanned the prefab structure. Inside, he could see rows of monitors. One of them flickered, showing a camera feed of the forest trail they had taken earlier. Another screen showed the drainage tunnel. A third, Caleb's breath caught, showed him, standing at the edge of the clearing with Marissa. They're watching us. Marissa pulled him back. We have to disable the tower. Before they could move, the door to the station creaked open. A man stepped out. Or something like a man. He wore a clean lab coat, pristine and out of place. His skin was pale, too smooth. His eyes glowed faintly blue, and his movements were off, just slightly too precise, too calculated. "Hello, Caleb," the man said calmly, in the exact voice of his brother. Caleb froze. The figure stepped forward. "We've been waiting. You've proven more resistant than most. But your presence here was inevitable." Marissa raised her gun. "Back off." "What are you?" "I am the signal," the thing said. "The experiment. The observer. I was never meant to speak to you directly, but your interference has accelerated the timeline." Caleb clenched his fists. "You're copying people. Their voices. Their faces. Why?" "To understand," the creature replied. "To become." Suddenly, dozens of the pale, glassy-eyed figures stepped into the clearing behind the tower. Silent. Perfectly still. Waiting. The fake brother continued. "You've shown exceptional resilience. A rare trait. You could be useful." "I'm not helping you," Caleb spat. "It's not a choice. The signal is already bound to your neural pattern. You are part of us now." Without thinking, Caleb raised his revolver and fired. The bullet struck the figure in the chest, but it didn't fall. It only staggered slightly, the wound already closing. "Violence," it said. "Predictable." Then it raised a hand. And the others advanced. Marissa yanked Caleb's arm. "Run." They sprinted toward the woods, the soundless horde right behind them. Caleb glanced back only once, and saw the tower emit a pulse of blue light, shooting straight into the sky. Whatever this experiment was, it had just moved into its next phase. The blue pulse from the radio tower lanced through the sky like a silent explosion, casting eerie shadows across the treetops. Caleb felt the wave pass through him, cold, electric, like ice sinking into his bones. He stumbled, dropping to one knee as his vision blurred. Marissa grabbed his arm, yanking him forward. "Get up. Keep moving." Behind them, the pale figures didn't run, they glided across the ground, fast and smooth, like they weren't bound by gravity. Their glowing eyes burned through the trees, always fixed ahead. "Caleb." Marissa's voice cut through the haze. He forced his legs to move. They crashed through the forest, roots grabbing at their feet, branches slicing at their arms. Caleb couldn't shake the sensation that something inside him had changed, that the pulse hadn't just passed through him. It had marked him. Finally, they reached a jagged cliff edge overlooking a shallow riverbed. The water below shimmered with that same unnatural blue. Marissa scanned the area, breathing hard. "We need higher ground. There's a ranger station up that hill." As they turned, Caleb felt it again, a vibration in his skull. Not sound. Not pain. Instruction. He froze. "Caleb?" Marissa turned back to him. "What's wrong?" I heard something," he muttered. "But it wasn't like before. It wasn't my brother. It was, inside my head." Marissa's face went pale. "They're syncing with you." "What?" "The pulse, it wasn't just a signal boost. It was a network update. They're not just broadcasting anymore, Caleb. They're connecting." They ran again, up the slope toward the ranger station. It was barely intact, windows shattered, roof sagging, but the tower above it still stood tall. Not transmitting, but intact. Analog. Untouched. They burst inside, barricading the door behind them with a toppled bookcase. The station smelled of mold and gasoline, but it was quiet. Too quiet. Caleb leaned against the wall, wiping sweat from his brow. "We can't keep running." "We won't," Marissa said, moving toward an old comms console. "This tower still has a passive relay. If I can rewire it, we might be able to piggyback a message out. Not their signal, ours. Something real." She started working, hands moving fast. Caleb tried to focus, but his mind buzzed with that alien rhythm. He saw flashes, images not his own. A dead city. A woman screaming. Rows of survivors standing perfectly still as blue light engulfed them. "Marissa," he said, voice shaky. "I think they're trying to show me things." She didn't look up. "Don't trust what you see. It's not truth. It's manipulation." "But what if it's both?" he asked. "What if they're showing us what will happen if we don't stop them?" She paused for half a second. "Then we send a warning. To everyone." Suddenly, the radio beside her crackled to life. A voice. Weak, but human. "If you're hearing this, you're not alone. We've seen the blue pulse. We've seen the towers. We're resisting. North Outpost 12. Repeat, North Outpost 12. Safe zone. Coordinates. Static." Marissa stared at the console. "They're out there. Real people. Fighting back." But Caleb was staring at the window. The forest had gone still again. The figures, gone. No movement. No sound. Not even wind. And then, thud. The front door creaked. Marissa grabbed her weapon. Caleb did the same. Another thud. Then a hiss of air. Something slid under the door. A small drone. Spherical, no bigger than a baseball. It hovered in place, then projected a hologram into the center of the room. The fake brother appeared again. But this time, he wasn't smiling. "You've passed the observation phase," it said coldly. "You continue to resist. Continue to corrupt the data set. That is, unfortunate." Marissa raised her gun, but the drone shot straight upward, smashing through the ceiling before she could fire. The radio console sparked, screens flickering. The tower above them groaned. Then, a deep rumble. From outside. Marissa ran to the back window and looked north. In the far distance, another tower, much taller, was rising from the earth like a giant mechanical tree, unfolding panels like petals. And from its center, a beam of blue shot into the clouds. "They're building more," she whispered. "This is just the beginning." Caleb felt the pulse again, this time stronger. Then the voice. "Join us, Caleb. The others already have. You're delaying the inevitable." He slammed his fist into the wall, shouting, "Get out of my head." Marissa spun back toward him. "We have one shot at this. If we can hijack that relay, we can send a jamming code. Disrupt the nearest signal. Maybe even shut down that new tower." Caleb looked at her, fire burning in his eyes. "Then let's fry the signal." The ranger station crackled with tension as Marissa connected wires from the ancient comms console to her custom transmitter. The smell of burning plastic filled the room, but it was working, slowly. Caleb paced nearby, his grip tight around a crowbar. Neither of them spoke much. The silence was broken only by the low mechanical hum building in the distance, the growing tower to the north. "I've overridden the input line," Marissa muttered. "We've got maybe 1 minute to send something before they trace the breach." Caleb looked up. "And what exactly are we sending?" "A feedback pulse. Scrambles the signal structure. It's not strong enough to bring the new tower down, but if we time it right, it'll jam the link between their network and this region. We cut off their influence, temporarily." He nodded, jaw clenched. One breath of air before the next wave. Exactly. She handed him the final switch, a square black box with a red button. Your call, Caleb. When you hit this, there's no turning back. They'll know. They'll come. He took the box, holding it in both hands. The voices in his head buzzed like static. They were louder now, insistent, almost angry. But somewhere deep down, he could still hear the real voice, the memory, of his brother, laughing beside him in the sun, long before the world went dark. This one's for you, Nathan, he whispered. And he pressed the button. The effect was instant. A deafening screech burst from every speaker in the room. Lights flickered violently. The signal hijack raced through the air like a lightning bolt, invisible but powerful. Caleb dropped to one knee as the voices in his head twisted and distorted into screams of digital rage. Outside, the towering monolith in the distance began to tremble. Its petals shuddered. The blue beam flickered like a failing light bulb. And for a moment, just a second, everything went quiet. Marissa was still watching the monitor. We did it. We actually did it. But then came the sound. Whir. Drones. Dozens of them. They swarmed from the trees, sleek and black, surrounding the station like hornets defending a hive. Red lights blinked beneath their undersides. One flew to the broken window and hovered there, its lens locking on Caleb. Then it projected another image. This time not his brother. This time, himself. An exact replica of Caleb stood before them, identical in every way. Even the clothing. Even the scar on his jaw. You're evolving, the copy said. Good. That was the purpose. Marissa aimed her gun but didn't fire. What is this? The doppelganger tilted its head. We don't want your extinction. We want your integration. Your species is adaptable. Emotional. It complicates things, but also offers potential. Caleb stood slowly. You manipulate people. Their voices. Their memories. That's not integration. That's invasion. You misunderstand, it replied. You are not the enemy. You are the experiment. The drones began circling faster. Marissa whispered, we need to run. But the fake Caleb stepped closer. The pulse didn't just mark you. It changed you. You've seen what others haven't. You've survived what others couldn't. Why fight what you're becoming? I'm not becoming you, Caleb snapped. Not us, it corrected. Something new. Suddenly, a powerful burst of static surged through the room, knocking the drone offline. The projection vanished. Marissa's eyes widened as she looked at the console. Another signal, not theirs. She tuned the frequency quickly. A voice came through, clear, strong, real. This is Outpost 12. We received your jamming code. Repeat, we received your jamming code. Reinforcements en route. Hold your position if you can. We are not alone out here. Do you copy? Caleb's heart leapt. Marissa grabbed the mic. This is Marissa Lane and Caleb Voss. We're alive. The pulse hit. We jammed it, but they're retaliating. Sending copies, drones, everything. Copy that. Sit tight. Extraction in 20 minutes. Signal confirmed. The message cut out. 20 minutes. It felt like a lifetime. Caleb and Marissa locked eyes. No words needed. They reinforced the station. Flipped tables. Nailed furniture to the windows. Set makeshift traps. The swarm outside gathered in silence, waiting. They won't hold back this time, Marissa said. Caleb nodded, gripping the crowbar. Then we don't either. He looked toward the rising tower in the distance, its beam now flickering like a dying star. For the first time in days, he felt something real in his chest. Hope. The wind howled around the ranger station, rattling loose shutters and slamming dead branches against the walls. Inside, Caleb and Marissa crouched by the main entrance, weapons in hand, eyes trained on every flicker of movement outside. The jamming pulse had worked. The tower's beam had dimmed. But the silence that followed felt far more dangerous. "They're not gone," Marissa whispered. "They're regrouping." Caleb didn't respond. He could still hear them, not with his ears, but deep in the recesses of his mind. The voices had changed. No longer commands, or threats. Now, they sounded curious. Observing. Waiting. "Do you understand what you've become?" one of them whispered from within. He clenched his jaw, forcing the voice out. "No more games. No more mind tricks." In the distance, a sudden rustling. Then the drone hum returned. This time louder. Heavier. Marissa checked her watch. 14 minutes until extraction. Caleb peeked through a crack in the barricade. A line of figures was forming in the woods. Not zombies, at least, not like before. These ones stood still, synchronized. Human in shape, but their movements were robotic. Controlled. Eyes glowing a soft, pulsing blue. "They're sending the puppets," he said. "Using people like antennas. They're trying to stop the pickup. Or worse, track it." Marissa scrambled to the transmitter. "Then we need to send a final message. Something that tells the others exactly what's coming." "But if you turn that thing back on," Caleb began. "They'll find us anyway." She started typing into the old console. Static hissed through the speakers. Caleb stood over her, watching as she entered coordinates, warnings, and code fragments they had gathered. Then, just before sending, she turned to him. "Say something." "What?" "You were the one they chose. The one they spoke to. People out there need to hear it, from you." Caleb hesitated, then leaned over the mic. He took a deep breath and began. "To anyone who can hear this, this is Caleb Voss. The signals you've been hearing aren't from survivors. They're from them. They've been copying us. Learning us. Replacing us. They don't want to kill us. They want to make us part of their network. But we're not data. We're not programs. We're still human. If you hear a familiar voice through the static, don't trust it. If a loved one calls out to you from the dark, don't follow. Hold on to what's real. Stay disconnected. And whatever you do, don't answer the signal." Marissa slammed the transmit key. The machine buzzed to life, pushing the message out in every direction. For a moment, everything pulsed with a warm, orange light, the human signal overriding the cold blue of the invaders. Then, an explosion. The outer wall shattered inward as two of the drone-controlled husks burst through. Caleb tackled one, driving it into a table. It shrieked, not with pain, but as a beacon, calling more. Marissa fired at the second, dropping it in a heap of twitching limbs. "More coming in," she shouted. Through the fog and trees, dozens, no, hundreds, were converging on the station. Their eyes lit the darkness like stars. They moved together, not like a horde, but like a system. Controlled. Precise. 7 minutes. Marissa yelled, reloading. Caleb stared at the beacon tower in the distance. Its blue glow was stuttering, corrupted by the jamming code they sent. But it wasn't down. Not yet. He made a decision. "I'm going to the roof." "What?" "I'll draw their attention, use myself as a signal. If they've marked me, then I'm the bait. You won't last 2 minutes up there." "I don't need to. Just one." Without waiting for permission, he sprinted up the narrow staircase. The roof creaked under his weight. He stepped into the open and raised a flare gun he'd found earlier. He lit it. The sky burst in a blinding red, painting the trees and towers below. Every infected eye turned to him. Caleb opened his arms. "Come on, then. You want me? I'm right here." From above, a rumble, then the unmistakable chop of rotor blades. A helicopter. Spotlight cut through the darkness. "Survivor on the roof," confirmed. "Go!" Marissa's voice echoed from below. The tide rushed toward the base of the tower, clawing and climbing. Caleb held the flare high as the rope descended. His legs buckled just as Marissa burst through the hatch, grabbed him, and clipped them both to the line. They soared upward just as the mast swarmed the rooftop, hands reaching in vain. Below them, the station burned. Farther out, the corrupted tower let out a final groan, and collapsed, its petals folding inward, sparks raining into the trees. Inside the chopper, Caleb collapsed, exhausted. "You sent the message?" one of the soldiers asked. Marissa nodded. "He did." Caleb looked out the window. The blue glow still pulsed in the far distance. There were more towers. More signals. But now, there was also a voice of resistance cutting through the static. His voice. "The end."